This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The drifters hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the cinephile, unseen, unseen. The veils twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 321. I'm your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here, this is going to be my last of the winter year-end episodes that I'm doing for this year. And so that's going to be number 30 of these that I've done. And the two featured reviews, this one actually is kind of an interesting little double feature here. The first one's going to be The Carpenter's Son. That's my 2025 release. And I'm pairing that up with Bloody New Year, because this technically would be my New Year's episode, since this comes out on 12/29 is the date that I was shooting for. Don't know if I landed it as of when I'm recording this or not, but those are the two featured reviews. And then The Carpenter's Son, I'm not going to go ahead and reveal as to why that one works, but if you kind of figure things out there, it does make sense. But then for mini reviews here, I went to the Gateway Film Center to watch it's not a horror movie, but it's definitely dark and depressing, and that's going to be Angel's Egg from 1985. Then my Voyage to the Fives rewatch is going to be Piranha from 1995. And then I have three reviews here that one of them is going to be a rewatch, and that's going to be Black Phone 2. And then Marshmallow is going to be a 2025 film that I'm trying to just make in some of these watches here to see if I could, figure out things and for my end of list and make sure that I don't miss anything super important. And then I also got to check out a screener of For God's Sake, Wake Her Up. And then I was going to do, there was going to be another review here for I was going to try to watch something, but time got short with me. And then I ended up having 5 episodes. I have 2 episodes of It, Welcome to Derry that I'm covering, as well as the 3 episodes of Stranger Things that were out on Christmas Day. Those will round out my mini reviews. So I don't think there's anything else to do here for this intro except saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
You know what that sound means? It's another episode of Game for a Movie, where we ask, are you game for a movie?
Tell me, Andre.
There's no special features on that goddamn DVD, alright?
Oh, wow.
For Hansel and Gretel?
Hansel and
You
Gretel.
have a
watched-
DVD
you watched it?
of
Yeah.
Hansel and Gretel.
She basically has sex with it, somehow.
No,
Foreplay.
yeah, yes.
She's chair foreplay.
They knocked it out of the park, which is why it's my number 3. So.
Oh!
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't be in it because this movie doesn't have women. But, it's
You-
fine.
It
It's right.
It has one.
You would have 3 lines of dialogue.
The
But how much-
three.
Oh.
Okay. So I'm actually going to get, I earn my 4 sentences of dialogue rather than, here, have a paycheck. You just stood there on the screen. You're a sexy lamp.
Super porn. Anyway, we're
Dark
not.
Phoenix 2.
No.
No.
Because they really hate each other, so we get to enjoy some wonderful comedic scenes of them hating each other so much that they get into physical altercations that include her biting ex-detective Phillips's dick.
Okay.
But we don't. Okay. In a hot tub.
I know all of those words were English, but the way you constructed them, I'm lost.
I'm not finding their range of them very well. For those who haven't rated us or liked or given us a review, don't say that we haven't given you anything of value after listening to this podcast. You now know the difference between an R-rated dick and an NC-17 X-rated dick. You're welcome.
Thank you guys for listening to Game for a Movie, where we ask, are you game for a movie? We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jittering an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in. And Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash. Fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And for my first mini review here is going to be Angel's Egg. It goes by the original title of Tenshi no Tamago. This was directed by Mamoru Oshii, who also wrote this with Yoshitaka Amano. And this features the voices of Mako Hadoyo, Jinpachi Nizo, and Keiichi Noda. This is a Japanese adult animation, anime, dark fantasy, dystopian sci-fi, hand-drawn animation, supernatural, fantasy, suspense, mystery. That's probably about the extent of what I'll do there. This is from Japan, currently sitting on a 7.5 on IMDb and a 4.1 on Letterboxd with a synopsis being: in a desolate world, a young girl devoutly guards an egg of unknown origin and encounters a boy carrying a cross who begins to question the nature of his faith and his mysterious mission. So this isn't a horror film, but it's definitely dark and depressing. So I actually have an interesting history here. My father had a VHS tape called In the Aftermath. Now that film had live action footage and then edited elements of this anime. Now my sister and I tried watching it, that version we had growing up. We never really cared for it. It wasn't until I was an adult and started doing research that I discovered Angel's Egg was the original. So I've seen it once, I enjoyed it, but there was a 4K restoration, so I saw it at the Gateway Film Center on the big screen. And then I'll go ahead and just say this is a difficult film to talk about. There isn't much in the way of a plot. We see this alien spaceship land, and then from there we follow an unnamed girl who I'm assuming is Angel, and she is voiced by Hoyodo. Now she has an egg that she's protecting. We see that she collects glass bottles, and she has a huge number of these. A little bit of them, they all have like water in it. She then encounters a strange man with a large weapon. He is voiced by Nizu, and now he's curious as he wants to know what's inside the egg and she's protecting. So I'll be honest, I've seen this twice and still have no idea what I really truly watch. It's short, running about 71 minutes. I had to look up the plot. It made me feel better that this is notoriously cryptic. It sounds like a writer-director here of Oshii made this, and he doesn't even fully understand it himself. He had a crisis of faith, and this is what he kind of made. Now, what I know of a couple times here is that this young girl leaves her egg unattended. Once a man gives it back to her, another time his wonder causes him to see what's inside. So this is a post-apocalyptic world where we don't see a lot of people. Now something I'll include here is that outside of our duo, we have these strange fishermen that are trying to catch these large shadowfish. So I've done a little bit of research here, is that Oshii studied to be a Christian priest and then abandoned that. This egg that Angel protects can be seen as blind faith or hope. Now she has something to believe in where this man doesn't, and he shatters that as well. So then bringing back up these fishermen, you could see them as hunting these shadowfish that don't exist. They are destroying the city in the process of trying. An interpretation I found is that it's a fruitless chase. There isn't a way to catch them. This could be chasing the meaning in the world where God is absent. Now, there's one last thing I want to bring up here, and I won't spoil the final images because they're great, but what I will bring up is the story of Noah and his ark from the Bible are brought up. Now, more specifically, the dove that was released and never comes back, being forgotten. I do like how water in the world being mostly empty can be factored into telling of this. That's a good touch. I'll then bring in the voice acting here, just kind of move away from there. I didn't bring up that Noda is the narrator. Hayoto and Nizu both bring their characters to life. I'll also bring in filmmaking. This world is just, they created as bleak. It's depressing, but it's also interesting to explore. We get bits of mythology here that ultimately go nowhere, and that keeps me intrigued. I like the music to help build the atmosphere needed. It's also interesting that I saw that Yoshitaka Amano helped do this, and they also worked on the early Final Fantasy games, which I was a huge fan of those. And there was at one time when I was watching this in the theater this time around that there were these war machines that drove through the city that made me think of those games. So in conclusion, this is less a conventional film and more of an immersive, moving piece of visual poetry. It thrives on atmosphere, cryptic religious allegory, and stunning bleak animation that perfectly captures the director's spiritual and existential anguish. While it demands patience and multiple interpretations from the viewer and admittedly leaves many questions unanswered, it remains a masterful work of art. The recent 4K restoration makes it a necessary watch for anyone interested in experimental animation, philosophical cinema, or the foundational work of Oshii. It's a film that lingers long after the credits roll, urging you to seek meaning in its beautiful desolation. So my rating here for Angel's Egg, I give this one an 8 out of 10. And then up next is my Voyage of the Fives rewatch of Piranha from 1995, directed by Scott P. Levy. It was written by Alex Simon, and then they're also giving credit here to the original story. It was done by John Sayles and Richard Robinson, and Sayles also did the original screenplay. So this is starring William Catt, Alexandra Paul, and Monty Markham. Now, this is a horror sci-fi film. I would say it's eco-horror in there as well, since that wasn't explicitly stated, but this is from the United States and Japan, so a co-production. Currently sitting on a 4.1 on IMDb and a 2.2 on Letterboxd, where synopsis being: when a flesh-eating piranhas are accidentally released in a summer resort's rivers, the guests have become their next meal. So I originally saw this out back in college. I watched my father's copy of the original, and then I sought out the sequels and other versions of the story. I didn't remember a whole lot here, if I'm going to be honest. I'm probably watching these pretty close together, so I kind of mixed up what was what in each of these. So, but it's interesting to see as, like a revisit here for a Voyage to the Fives. So where I'm going to start, though, is going to be, it's been a while since I've watched that original take, as it's more recently that I've seen Piranha 3D. The setup here is closer to the 78 version, which an experiment is freed into the river, so what we're getting isn't necessarily new. The best aspect, it doesn't waste time in getting into it. It's pretty efficient there. Now that I have the setup, I do want to go into the concept of government experiments messing with nature. It's one of the classic tropes that you get with eco-horror. So we have a Dr. Baines here, who is portrayed by Darlene Carr. Now, she isn't in time to stop our duo, who would be Paul Grogan, portrayed by the great William Catt, and Maggie McNamara, portrayed by Paul. Now, it's interesting is that Dr. Baines is to blame for what she did. It's Maggie and Paul's fault for what happens after that. The building looked abandoned, and doing things in secret is another element. Regardless of how the piranha come to be and get free, I like what they're doing there. Then to develop from that idea is I love animal attack films. Eco-horror is something that we have an inherent fear that humanity has meddled and nature is fighting back. This brings in the mad scientist element of playing God and making something that's more terrifying since it isn't natural. There's a comment that I got annoyed by, though, where Dr. Baines talks about how piranha attack more people, I think, than like sharks per year or something like that, which is false. I can overlook it for the sake of the movie, but being attacked by something in the water when you aren't expecting it is terrifying. So there's also a lot of social commentary and things taken from Jaws, like corporate greed. Instead of the mayor wanting to keep the island open for tourism, we have J.R. Randolph, portrayed by Markham, who he is opening up this resort, so if everything this could mess up his opening. He ignores what Maggie says, and it's kind of interesting because he actually hired her to find his daughter, who is actually the first victim, along with her boyfriend. So we even have the governor who is at this opening here. He's portrayed by James Cairn. I love that. So there's just negligence here. And so that's enough for the story. Let's go over the acting performances. Catt is a recluse, and I think he's solid there. He's forced into helping, and his chemistry with Paul works. What is interesting is that we're told she's this great PI who oddly seems a bit bumbling from what we see. She's still fine and kind of works what she needed. Markham works as this rich villain, and then Kara is fine as that mad scientist. The younger cast here includes young Mila Kunis, as well as Soleil Moon Frye. So, Punky Brewster herself. Now she plays a counselor here. And then we also have James Cairn, like I said, Leland Orser. Their cameos and the rest of the cast kind of serve their purpose for what was needed. All it's to be filmmaking aspects. Now, from what I was gathering, this is a shot-for-shot remake. It has been a while since since I've seen that original one, so I can't truly kind of compare, have issues with that. The cinematography and framing, though, we get fine. My biggest issue is with the effects. I do like the underwater attack scenes. The problem is that the fish that we get quick glimpses. They're not swimming. It's cheesy and kind of falls in line with Roger Corman Productions. No major gripes, though. I think the musical selections fit for what was needed without necessarily standing out. So in conclusion, this is a successful, delivers on the B-movie eco-horror premise established by the 1978 original. While derivative and featuring noticeable flaws with the fish effects, the film is efficient in its pacing, benefited from solid performances by Catt and Paul, and effectively incorporates the classic tropes of government negligence and corporate greed. It serves as a fun, if somewhat cheesy, installment for fans of animal attack films. While I'll probably say go see the original, this is still fun watch that moves quick. And I'll say there's also nudity in here. This says it's a TV movie. I'm guessing this is probably like an HBO production or something along those lines, where it came to more of like the premium ones, or they probably could just edit out those scenes of nudity for, make it for TV pretty easy. But anyways, my rating here for Piranha 1995 is going to be a 6.5 out of 10. And then I'm going to go a little bit short here with my recap, but it's going to be Black Phone 2 because I've covered this previously, and I'll get into that here in a second. But this is from 2025. It is directed by Scott Derrickson, and then this is based from the short story by Joe Hill. Derrickson also wrote this with C. Robert Cargill. Stars Ethan Hawke, Mason Timms, and Madeline McGraw. This is a body horror, folk horror, monster, psychological, supernatural horror film that is from the United States and Canada, so a co-production. This is currently sitting on a 6.1 on IMDb and a 3.1 on Letterboxd, or Synopsis being. As Finn, now 17, struggles with his life after captivity, his sister begins receiving calls in her dreams from the Black Phone and seeing disturbing visions of 3 boys being stalked at a winter camp known as Alpine Lake. Go ahead and say that Finn is once again portrayed by Timms, his sister Gwen portrayed by Madeline McGraw, and the Grabber being reprised once again by Ethan Hawke. So this one here, if you want to hear a featured review, or actually 2 mini reviews, I've done it on 312 was the other time, so if you want to hear a mini review, I will direct you over to there. But as I was getting ready to say, this takes place in 1982, 4 years after Finn Blake escaped the Grabber. Now Finn struggles with life after his captivity. His sister Gwen now is receiving calls from her dreams from this Black Phone, and there's disturbing visions of these boys and everything. Under the guise of being counselors in training, Gwen convinces Ernesto Alarino, portrayed by Miguel Mora, to go to the camp with her, and Finn joins them at the last minute as he doesn't necessarily like his sister going off with a boy who has a crush on her. So what I like here is Finn's art. He is no longer the bullied kid. He's now the bully who inwardly is hurting coping by smoking marijuana and dealing with survivor's guilt. Ironically, he is falling in the footsteps of recovering alcoholic father of Terrence, who we know he hated so badly. I mean, his father was quite abusive in that first one, but he is doing what he can now, making amends, portrayed by Jeremy Davies once again. And then we also have Gwen's arc. Gwen is bullied and dealing with disturbing dreams herself, similar to what her mother did, and they're so worried here because she sees this as a curse, and she's afraid she's going to follow in her mother's footsteps of committing suicide. Her mother actually in this is Hope, portrayed by Anna Lore. And she's also kind of interesting is that Gwen learns that her mother was a counselor at Alpine Lake, and her father also reinforces that and confirms it. So the Grabber, now his body being dead, the Grabber's spirit is free and is more powerful, ethereal, dream-haunting villain, very reminiscent of Freddy Krueger. The film doesn't ever truly show his face. The mask they have is great. There's also some like Dream Warrior stuff, so like Nightmare on Elm Street 3 type stuff, but I'll digress. So this one also, we're getting some cool kind of themes and concepts and influences and everything. I like the break into the cycle to heal. We also have faith versus fear and a shared, curse of psychic abilities between Gwen and her mother. And I mean, Finn also kind of has this as well. The camp setting and filmmaking evoke a similar mood to like The Shining and Sinister, and I also like when they're doing things from the past, like showing these boys being haunted. It definitely is like the Sinister thing there, where you're having like old film being used. I do like using that filter. The climax at the frozen lake has an allegory to Dante's Ninth Circle of Hell as well. That's something I kind of noticed the second time around. So I find this to build upon its predecessor by moving forward in time and bringing back the core cast for a compelling character development. This intelligently expands on supernatural mythos by transitioning the Grabber into what he gets in this one. It was a dream-haunting villain. I do think this is brutal and atmospheric horror experience with strong performances, so I like this better the first time around. I've kind of cooled on it a bit as well, but I went from like an 8, and I'm now sitting on a 7.5 out of 10. Still worthwhile watch. I know some people aren't the biggest fan of it. I think what it's doing is definitely a great way to kind of develop what we got, though. And then I also got to check out here Marshmallow from 2025, directed by Daniel Del Purgatorio. This was written by Andy Greshovic. And then this is starring Q Lawrence, Pearson Fode, and Maya Chech. And also say that Corbin Burnson makes an appearance in this one. I didn't realize it at first. But this is a horror sci-fi film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.7 on IMDb and a 2.9 on Letterboxd, or Synopsis being. Once a fabled campfire tale becomes real, a group of campers uncover a profound secret that questions their very existence. So I heard about this through podcasts. I know a buddy of mine, Aaron, did some interviews, and he recommended this on the Dreadcast when I was on it at one point. It went on a list of ones to check out for the year, but this, being the highest rated, or one of the highest rated that I hadn't seen yet, I decided to go ahead and move it up to, make sure that I checked it out before, compiling that end of year list. And where I'm going to start is by saying that this plays with a familiar setting and tropes while doing something different. I would have never predicted where this goes. What I will say is that it makes sense as one of the genres of sci-fi. I'm going to avoid spoilers, as I think you should come into this one as blind as possible and kind of just experience things. But I love the summer camp setting. My initial thought was that this is going to be a slasher film. We do get elements of that. It also plays with expectations by giving this urban legend about this killer known as the Doctor. Then you have our main character of Morgan, who sees somebody fitting that description, Morgan being portrayed by Lawrence. There are other elements that get introduced as we go, and I think it helps to develop and explain truly what is happening the deeper into the story that we get. So let's shift gears here and talk about Morgan as a character. What is interesting is that this feels similar to like Sleepaway Camp in that he is quiet and struggles to make friends. There's a secret that is harbored, but not in the same way in the slightest. Having Morgan being away from his family is sad. He's isolated at first, and then we see what he can to make friends, and this would include like Dirk, portrayed by Max Mallis. You also have Raj, portrayed by Winston Vagapalli, and then there's Sam, portrayed by Dylan Friedman. And then I even didn't bring up Pilar, portrayed by Kai Chech. Lawrence does well at being this kid who wants to fit in, but just kind of struggles with being awkward, so credit there. Then let's go ahead and go over where I'm going to have to tread lightly. Now, Morgan suspects that, well, his family actually wants him to room with this kid named CJ. And now, Morgan doesn't want to do this. CJ is being portrayed here by Sutton Johnston. Now, Morgan notices or thinks that something is off. That is before he and Raj are attacked. CJ is notably aggressive. It seems like that from the start, though. Now, there's a late reveal which provides a gut punch ending, but seems underdeveloped and implausible given the character's changed behavior. Doesn't significantly advance the plot. Now, the number of children ending up here also seems a little bit implausible due to resource constraints, though it's a minor issue because we are watching a movie, so I mean, I can get what we're doing here and I can move with it. Now, some other themes that I want to bring up here would be like the weight of trauma. We see that almost every night Morgan has dreams of drowning. His grandfather, who is Roy, portrayed by Burnson, starts to show up in these as well because we see he has a heart attack very early on. The loss of innocence is another element. There's the idea of like adults gaslighting children for their own good. It also feels like a coping with fear. I'll end this out by saying that we get the ethics of control and dealing with reality, avoiding growth. Let's then go over to the acting performances. Lawrence is a strong lead and his character growth is effective. I would say that Mallis, Chech, Vagapalli, and Friedman are all good as this like found family through friendship. Then I didn't even bring up here that we have Paul Soter, who is portraying Hugh Collins. He's as solid as a guy who runs the camp, and his delivery of lines works because he has a comedic background. I would also give credit here to the counselors that are helping him, which would be like Pearson Fode portraying the character of Casuar. Then we also have Rachel being portrayed by Georgia Wingham, and then there is Laurie portrayed by Samantha Nayland Trumbo, and Avery by Jeffrey James, and then Franklin portrayed by Maxwell Whittingham Cooper. They're all working as counselors. The last one there, that Whittington Cooper as Franklin, he's the most human of them, and that works as well. Burnson is out as a grandfather figure, round out the necessary cast, along with the parents here, portrayed by Alicia Reiner, and then we also here have Todd M. Friedman. All then would be left here would be filmmaking aspects. I think that the cinematography and the framing worked to capture the isolated setting of camp. The night where things went off the rails worked. The nightmare sequences were solid, especially with the reveal of the truth. I thought that it hid things well and progressed the story to make sense. We were limited on the effects used, but also doesn't necessarily need them. The blood and after effects were solid. The sound design and the music also helped to build the atmosphere. So in conclusion, this is a highly effective genre blend that excels by subverting expectations associated with summer camp setting. Starting as a slasher, Marshmallow quickly shifts into a nuanced sci-fi horror exploring trauma, control, and isolation. Lawrence's strong central performance, supported by a believable ensemble, makes the film feel more familiar and original, though the late-stage elements are underdeveloped, and solid direction, atmospheric cinematography, and a satisfying thematic payoff make it a compelling and highly recommended watch for horror fans seeking something a little bit different here in 2025. So my rating then for Marshmallow, I give this a 7 out of 10. Then my last feature I'm going to cover here is going to be For God's Sake, Wake Her Up. This is from 2024, directed by Wayne Morhart, written by James Justin Howells. The stars Sarah Crawford, Mami Kaikimoto, and Queen Legend. This is a horror film that's from Canada, currently sitting on a 7.1 on IMDb. Not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say about a 3 to a 3.5 star movie over there with a synopsis being. In a quest for redemption, Riz faces a malevolent entity to save April's life by deciphering the chilling secrets within her video diaries. So Riz is being portrayed by Sarah Crawford, and then April by Kakimoto. So this is a film I got the chance to see thanks to Shirley from the Horror Collective. This was a film that looks like it did its festival rounds in 2024 and was wide released here in 2025. Since I'm doing my end of year roundup here in December, I decided to give this a watch to see where I fell with it, kind of my thoughts and everything. Other than that, seeing the long title, I did come into this one blind. So where I'm going to start is going to be, this has a fairly basic concept that kind of works for the most part. Sleep paralysis is a terrifying idea. I did read a book from a trained psychologist who brought up that basically a lot of horror films are taken from like real afflictions like this. And so this does play with supernatural elements like a potential dream demon or a similar entity. And it also kind of seems like it might be cultural as well. I do like this, that a good portion of this, I could see that there is something perfectly logical happening here. It isn't until we approach the climax that we see there could be more going on. Now that it's set up, let's kind of delve in more into the characters. Riz is our lead, and she is of Asian descent. Driven by her demanding mother, she was forced into like rigorous studying and extracurriculars. Her mother's sudden death, just as Riz was getting ready to rebel, causes her depression. Finding April in her current state offers Riz a chance at redemption. Having not been there when her mother passed away, it is now haunting her. Crawford's portrayal is somewhat whiny, but suits the character's age. Then there is April. What is interesting here is I pick up a little bit on social commentary. Due to not having any family with her in her affliction, she loses her job. She cannot pay for treatments. Modern medicine doesn't seem to have an explanation either. I do like that we have this allegory here for suicide. She has given up, accepting her fate. It isn't until Riz and Miles, who is portrayed by Legend, show up with a former kind of wanting to help. Kakimoto does a lot of the acting without dialogue, being in a state of paralysis. She is able to convey how tired she is while surviving this entity this long. So what I'll then go would be kind of like folk horror aspects of this film. I love that we don't fully know what it is. We do learn from the tapes that it seems to be following April's grandmother from Asia. There seems to be a bit of research that was done, but we don't necessarily get like an info dump. We just know as much as what Riz can decipher. I do like that we get this revealed that she knows 5 languages. That gets revealed early on, and it comes in handy with this diary and figuring out what this demon could be. It does seem like it's an incubus, which works for me. I do appreciate the mythology like this. I'll then go ahead and include fleshing out these themes that I've touched on. There's unresolved grief for Riz. The weight of that guilt is causing her to spiral. This leads her down this path to save April. It also seems like there could be generational trauma both with April and Riz, even though the former isn't fully explored. There is this horror here with like sleep paralysis, since it would be terrifying to be trapped in your own body without being able to act. There's also isolation and desolation that comes with depression. So that should be enough for the story. Let's go over to the acting. I've already said that Crawford and Kakimoto carry this. Legend is solid in support. What I like is that she could be hinting at deeper emotional connection with Riz, but that doesn't get fully understand it. This could have been developed just a bit more. We also here have Isabel Clapwick, who has a good look for the entity. She's also quite creepy. And then Bridget Lee Martin is good as this figure that haunts Riz as well. That's the mother. All that's left then would be the filmmaking aspect. Cinematography, especially in April's bedroom, is good. The sleep paralysis simulation is effective and anxiety-inducing. This clearly establishes April's low-income neighborhood, suggesting the isolation. The limited effects work, and the demon's design remains a highlight. The sound design and music are adequate. However, the film is overly dialogue-driven, causing it to drag and become boring. In conclusion, this is conceptually strong horror film that delves into the terrors of sleep paralysis, layering it with themes of unresolved grief, generational trauma, and isolation. While the performances by Crawford and Kakimoto are notable, especially Kakimoto's nonverbal conveyance of despair, the film's pacing suffers from overly dialogue-heavy structure, leading to moments that drag. However, the effective cinematography, the unsettling simulation of paralysis, and the intriguing folk horror mythology surrounding the incubus make this a compelling, if slightly flawed, watch. It leverages real-world anxiety to deliver a supernatural horror experience that is at its best, is genuinely creepy and thought-provoking. So my rating here then for God's Sake, Wake Her Up is going to be a 6 out of 10. Now I'm not sure where this is streaming as of yet, but keep an eye out here as this should be coming to VOD soon if it isn't already. Then I'm going to shift over to 2 episodes of It, Welcome to Derry, and the first one is going to be episode 6, In the Name of the Father. This was directed by Jamie Travis, and the synopsis: plagued by increasingly dark visions, Dick learns the black spot is integral to Charlotte's plan. Meanwhile, Will faces his parents' disapproval, Marge stands up to the patty cakes, and Lily's mental state worsens. So this one here is, we're actually learning here about, we get to see Mabel, who Ingrid is Madeline Stowe. And we actually get to see that when there's a heartfelt moment here. Actually, it's not a heartfelt moment. We actually are seeing inside Jupiter Hill when Ingrid is younger. I'm not sure if it's probably not going to be easier to find here. If it was, looks like it's not all that easy to kind of track down, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. But we see there's something that happened in the past there. We actually get a heartfelt moment here between Marge and the Richie character, and that's what I was actually starting to say. I was jumping a little bit ahead there. Marge being portrayed by Matilda Lawler, and then Richie is being portrayed by Arian S. Cartaya. And then we also get to see here that Hank Grogan, portrayed by Steven Ryder, is being hidden at the black spot. And then Dick Halloran is struggling from having his connection with this entity like he did. And Dick is being portrayed by Chris Chalk. And then we actually see him lashing out at Leroy, portrayed by Jovan Epidio. And then Lily's also kind of losing her mind here a little bit. She's portrayed by Clara Stagg. So Marge stands up to the patty cakes, and then we actually make a connection here. I'm not going to reveal it here, but it is something that I made a connection to the It movies and everything like that. And we actually get to see this play out in the basement of Jupiter Hill. And then we actually see more why Marge falls for Richie as things kind of go on there. And then we actually get to see something that happens in the book of it. And yeah, everything there as some people pull up to the black spot as things get revealed here. And I'll just say that Chief Clint Bowers might not be in that position at the moment. And he is portrayed by Peter Outerbridge. And then, yeah, so my rating here for that episode is going to be an 8 out of 10. Then Chapter 7 is going to be the black spot. We actually get to learn a little bit more about people here. Andy Muschietti actually directed this one. A vigilante attack on the black spot unleashes long dormant forces. In the aftermath, Dick helps to uncover another crucial artifact. So this actually starts back in 1908. We actually get to see Pennywise performing as a man and get to learn a little bit more here about a certain child that connects everything. Kids got unruly, messed up his dancing part of his act. And then we actually get to see what gets revealed kind of with some of the stuff going on there. And then I think really we learn that is Pennywise's real name is Robert. He goes by Bob. Notices that children are drawn to him, so the entity, that's why he did what he did. Then we get to Massacre at the Black Spot. We actually get to see Pennywise attacking people inside of the fires that's going on and everything like that. Dick sees past him. There's also a native hunter that is from the past. And then we also get to see even more why Marge probably, I wouldn't be shocked if she is the mother to Richie in the original films and or the remake films and everything like that, as there was a sacrifice made for her. And then what I'll also kind of say here is that the character of Stanley, who is this offhand? I'm drawing a blank real quick. Anyways, Stanley kind of sucks. And then we also get to see, oh, I know who Stanley is. That's the husband to Ingrid. And then he gets his little comeuppance here. And then I'll try to run through here, see if there's anything else. Dick is really struggling here. There's this major event here at the Black Spot should have put Pennywise back in a dormant thing, but we get to see the military does something quite horrible. Dick found what he needed, still struggling and everything like that, but Pennywise might be free now thanks to the military, and I actually gave this episode here a 7.5 out of 10, and I'm actually starting to watch the final episode of this first season here. Quite intrigued to see where things end up. And then I also got to watch the 3 episodes that are out now of Stranger Things. The first one's Chapter 5, Shock Jock. The gang hatches an electrifying plan to reconnect Will to the hive mind. Tensions flare during a search of the Upside Down's Hawkins lab. Frank Darabont actually did the directing here on this episode, and that synopsis actually does pretty well here. Will ends up making a gamble. Will being portrayed here by Noah Schnapp. And that gamble actually causes some issues here as that Vecna has another idea here to kind of put an end to certain things like that. Vecna being betrayed by Jamie Campbell Bower. We also have some uphill battle here. This is where people are kind of, the tensions are rising. Things are not going great. Dustin, portrayed by Gatton Monterosario, however you say that, and Steve Harrington, they have a fallout here. He's portrayed by Joe Keery. We also see that Jonathan Byers, Charlie Heaton, and Nancy Wheeler, Natalia Dyer, they have their own issues here. There's some really good stuff here. There's a character that was released at the end of the last episode, and then 11, of course, is there with Jim Hopper, 11 Millie Bobby Brown, and then Hopper by David Harbour. Things kind of seem like they're falling apart here. Max is trying to find a way out of the mind of Vecna, and she's portrayed by Sadie Sink. She's stuck in that coma. It might actually be a coma here. We also could go ahead and say that her and Holly are kind of getting very close to doing stuff like that. I gave this episode an 8 out of 10. And then Chapter 6 is Escape from Kamazatz. As Holly and Max fight to escape Vecna's mind, Elle finds a way into Will's. Joyce wrestles with guilt. Jonathan and Nancy face a turning point. So that's kind of what I was talking about with the other thing. Sean Levy did the directing here on this episode. We actually get to see there's a lot of repercussions from the last episode and true feelings getting revealed here. That's definitely between Jonathan and Nancy. They do a lot of reveals there. And we also get to see Dustin finally breaking down and telling Steve some of the things that he's been kind of hiding. And then they also might have some things that come to conclusion here. And this one ends on quite the cliffhanger that I rather enjoyed. I end up giving this one an 8.5 out of 10. And then the last episode that we got to watch is The Bridge. On the anniversary of Will's disappearance, a party reunites to prepare for battle with the world-altering implications. Now, this is one of the lowest rated episodes across all things. I don't necessarily think that's that bad, and neither did Jamie. So we have the Duffer Brothers and Levy are the ones who directed this one. And this feels like, it's actually kind of funny. The Bridge is what it's called. And this does feel like this type of episode. We're getting to figure out that what's going to lead to the finale. Little things get set up and then get set here. I actually think this one probably could have taken some of the stuff from the finale and done it here. But I understand what they're doing. We also get to see some characters finally get out. We also get to see that they finally figure out a lot more about the Upside Down, as well as what is now being called the Abyss, the planet that Vecna ended up on when 11, did what she did back in the past. Like I said, I didn't think it was that bad. I do think it's kind of a filler episode just to get you to that finale and everything like that, but I still gave this one a 7 out of 10. And I think that's all I'm going to do here. Then we're going to end up probably watching on New Year's Day the last episode, to finish this out. And then I should have it on the next one. But I'm going to go ahead and leave everything here and just say, let me get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
What awaits us when we turn at last to death? Let my faith endure. Faith. My only strength to bear against the devil itself. For years we live in hiding, driven from every home. He bears a power he cannot understand, a power I cannot contain.
Is he my father?
You put that in your mind. Do you want to know a secret? I know one that can free you.
Who are you?
You know who I am.
Is he from your angels or from demons?
You were always afraid, greatly afraid. My faith has been shattered! I am the accuser of life. I am the adversary. And why am I here?
To torment me.
Yes.
And for my first featured review here is going to be The Carpenter's Son from 2025. This is written and directed by Lofty Nathan. This stars Nicolas Cage, Noah Jupe, and F.K.A. Twigs. I think that might be how you say the name. And this is also featuring here the likes of Isla Johnston, Sohaila Yaqub, Penelope Markopoulou, Oresti Paladalis, Elena Topolodou, Mavero Matakis, Tekla Gatti, Kati Manoladaki, Demetrius Lauskas, Severos Kotis, Cizi Pananonopa, Michaelis Ioannona, Victor Haristov, Odysseus Zekis, and Gary Solomon. So this is a horror film that is a co-production of the United Kingdom and France. This is currently sitting on a 4.2 on IMDb and a 2.6 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a remote village in a Roman-era Egypt explodes into a spiritual warfare when a carpenter, his wife, and their child are targeted by supernatural forces. So this is one that intrigued me when I saw that it was playing at the Gateway Film Center. I wasn't able to catch it. I just couldn't get my schedules to line up. I also didn't realize this was horror until it was already gone. So there wasn't a 2025 release at the theater, so the week that I decided to check this out here as a featured review, and I'll get into why it fits the time that I watched it as well, so it's kind of a little cool serendipitous thing there. So let's do some feature notes first and start with our director, of Nathan. He has helmed 3 features and 2 shorts. This is the first of his works that I've seen, first in genre as well. Then as a writer, he wrote the same thing that he directed, adding 1 short as well. To the cast, we are going to start with Nicolas Cage here. He's been in 144 films and 5 shorts. I've seen him in 29 things. He's my 10th most seen actor of all time. Not horror, I've seen like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Kick-Ass, and National Treasure films. In horror, he's done 15, and I've seen 11. I'm just missing Vampire's Kiss, Pay the Ghost, Grand Isle, and a fan film for Mandy of Nightmares. So his co-star of Jupe has been in 25 features and 1 short. I've seen him in 4. Not horror, he was in Wonder, has 3 in genre, and I've seen them all now with A Quiet Place, this, and then A Quiet Place Part 2. So there's also going to be Twigs. She's been in 8 movies and 6 shorts. First of her works that I've seen has 4 in genre, 3 released. I've not seen the Crow remake from 2024 or Mother Mary. I know that one's kind of on my list, but she's also in an upcoming film called Lonely Woman as well. So let's jump into this movie here. So we start with a quote where this is a story that is being taken from. It's based on the infant gospel of Thomas. So there's some trivia. I'm actually going to go ahead and not read all of it just because it does give away something, but it shouldn't be too hard to figure out. But inspired by the infancy gospel of Thomas and a apocryphal gospel about the childhood of this character, the scripture, which dates back to the late 2nd, early 3rd century, details miraculous powers during this person's childhood. See how I danced around that there? Like I said, it should come as pretty easy who is what. But anyways, it's B&B. From there, we get to learn some of the characters. We have a Carpenter portrayed by Cage, the boy portrayed by Jupe, and then the mother by Twigs. This doesn't do a great job of hiding who these characters actually are, but I'll avoid spoilers and just kind of play along. Where this starts, though, is a mother giving birth. The Carpenter has a religious experience. This is important because his wife being pregnant is an immaculate event. His experience sparks his protection of her and the child. They flee due to the king and what could happen to their child. The Carpenter does seem this odd man in the distance, and this guy will come back later. So this shifts to the 1580. The boy and his family come to a village. The Carpenter agrees to take a job carving an idol for a temple. This causes him to pause, going against his faith. He doesn't want to create problems, though, so they're also given a house to live in. The boy is given a position to help a local teacher who is portrayed by Paula Dellis. So the boy is tempted. There is a stranger who is portrayed by Johnston, who intrigues him. She takes him to a leper and pushes him into them. This causes panic for fear of getting infected. I mean, I would be terrified too. But he is forced to sleep outside by his father after he gets cleaned up. I should also include that the Carpenter wants them all to keep a low profile, which the boy isn't really doing. He's also intrigued by their neighbor Lilith, portrayed by Jacob. I believe he sees her naked, or at least sees her getting cleaned up outside and everything. And yeah. But things take a dark turn when there's an effigy of a snake that is left for the boy. Lilith then takes it, and she attacks her mother by biting her cheek. This forces both of them to be taken to an execution ground, as it feels like she's being accused of being a sorceress or something along those lines. Now, the boy feels guilty and wants to help. This causes people in the village to think that he's a sorcerer. The truth of who the stranger is and what they're doing will force the family to flee. It could also push the boy to realize his true nature and who his real father is. So that's really my recap and introduction of the characters. What I want to start is that this is an excellent concept. Not everybody does and kind of would agree this being horror, or this is a good concept, but I consider The Passion of the Christ to be a body horror movie. The things that Jesus endured flirts with torture porn. This film is a similar vein on a smaller scale. I'm going to go ahead and move away from things here to avoid going into spoilers, but the title as well as certain elements should point out to who the boy is. So the gospel provides an easy foundation for a horror movie, utilizing common genre elements, and then start delving deeper here with our lead, that boy who believes his parents are his biological family until a stranger tempts him with the truth. The stranger aims to corrupt that boy, viewing him as a crucial asset due to his potential. Thought that Jupe was good as this conflicted young man facing this choice. So the father, who is a carpenter, had a past religious experience. He is willing to break a commandment for his work and avoids causing trouble. Though hard on the boy, his intent is protective. He fears that the boy's talents could lead to harsh punishments. This stems from love, though he is experiencing a crisis of faith, not having had a religious experience since the boy's birth. Cage's subdued but effective performance ultimately benefits the film. And the other character would be the stranger. This is an androgynous performance by Johnston. They appear to be a girl, but you also truly don't know, and this person's usually conceived to be a man. We also see that not everything as it seems, as this boy sees the stranger one way, where the Carpenter another. I love this horrible thing to scare the boy, but then entices them with this rift that's being created. The goal is isolation, and I think that works well. What was done for this character was one of the best parts, in my opinion. Before moving away from the story completely, I do love this vision of the lesser discussed biblical story. It is telling the tale where this key figure in a major religion, when they have a crisis of what their purpose is. I love that we see the boy get violent. There might actually be a character they kill. It is interesting to see this figure fallible, making human decisions. How things play makes a whole lot of sense, though, for everything that kind of comes together. Let's then discuss the actor performances. Cage, Jupe, and Johnson all carry this. Twigs doesn't do much, in my opinion. It was a wooden performance where we don't get much emotion. I forget for stretches that she's even in this. Jacob was fine in her role. I'd say the rest of the cast rounded us out for what was needed. All it's left them for some trivia is going to be filmmaking. The cinematography and framing effectively capture the era. The boy's outburst was a strong sequence, highlighting the different perspectives of this person. The boy seeing a stranger, the Carpenter seeing this figure from the past. Practical effects were solid, though some CGI was a little bit weaker. Overall, the sound design and music were successful in helping to build the necessary atmosphere that we do need here. And then Nicolas Cage was actually attacked by bees while filming this, which is kind of funny for if you know the Wicker Man kind of thing there. Cage told his agent to find the closest script to a Robert Eggers movie, as Cage was offended by Eggers' remarks that he can't see Cage fitting in his movies. That makes a whole lot of sense. Because another one here, we took this as a challenge to that director. So the movie takes place in Egypt, and its writer and director, Nathan, is an Egyptian Christian. Announcement of the movie was met by public anger in Egypt, with Muslims and Christians finding it offensive to the Holy Family. Egyptian authorities denied permission for shooting, so the production had to be moved to Greece. The casting drew controversy among Christians and Muslims worldwide, and the story itself was called Blasphemy. Makes me like it a little bit more there. Cage was a big fan of Honey Boy. After watching it, he promised actor Jupe that they would make a movie together, and when this film came up, was offered to Cage, he insisted on casting Jupe. The original language of this gospel is Greek, so that's kind of cool there. Now, Joseph's description as a tekton has been translated into English as carpenter. The Greek word appears in both Matthew 13:55 and Mark 6:3. And then the only other trivia here is kind of explaining who the other characters are, and I don't necessarily want to do that, as, like I said, I'm going to leave everything there. So, in conclusion, this presents a fascinating and unsettling horror interpretation of a lesser-known biblical apocrypha. I don't know how to say that word. The film benefits immensely from its compelling core concept and the strong, nuanced performances delivered by Jupe, Cage, and Johnston. While the final execution is occasionally hampered by minor technical issues, such as uneven CGI and a less engaging supportive performance from Twigs, director Nathan successfully crafts a thoughtful and atmospheric piece. It functions both as an effective slow-burn horror film and a profound exploration of identity, faith, and terrifying weight of destiny. This film is well worth seeking out, especially for those who appreciate theological horror that challenges conventional narratives. So my rating here for The Carpenter Son, I enjoyed this well enough. I gave this one a 6 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily need to do anything there. Outside of it would be me just literally revealing certain things that I don't necessarily want to do. So let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
It started as a day out, a trip that held the promise of fun and pleasure. But for Rick and his friends, the fun ended early when they landed on Grand Island. For those who dare, face a horrifying and bloody new year. Attacked by the dead, threatened by evil, chased by the unknown, terrorized by monsters. They cannot escape the fate that awaits them when they become caught in the angry half-world. Dead or alive, they are locked in time forever. Trapped in the Hotel of Horror, they can check out anytime, but they can never leave. What started as a day to remember ended in a bloody new year.
And for my second featured review here to get in the season is going to be Bloody New Year from 1987. This is directed by Norman J. Warren, who also co-wrote this with Hayden Pierce and Fraser Pierce. This stars Susie Atchison, Nikki Brooks, and Colin Haywood, while also featuring the likes here of Mark Powley, Catherine Romaine, Julian Ronnie, Steve Emerson, Steve Wilshire, John Glenatoran, Val Graham, David Lynn, Rory McLean, Nick Doucette, Steve Edison, Roy Hill, Chaz Kronk, Tony Hernandez, and Jenny Bayless. So this here is a folk horror comedy mystery sci-fi film that is from the United Kingdom. Currently sitting on a 4.5 on IMDb and a 2.5 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being. A group of friends take refuge in an island hotel decorated for New Year's. The problem is, it's early summer, and soon enough, even the walls themselves are striking out against them. I actually believe this is taking place in July. So this film I learned about through podcasts. It went on a list of one to see, and I decided to move it up here since this is my New Year's Eve, or my New Year's themed episode, and it's been a while since I heard anybody discuss it, so I came in blind. My guess is probably popped up mostly due to probably being like a box set of our co-writer director here of Warren, as I believe the copy that I saw was from Vinegar Syndrome. So let's do some feature notes here and start with our director of Norman. He directed 9 features and 7 shorts. First of his works that I've seen, 5 are what he's done in horror. I have not seen Inseminoid, Prey, Satan's Slave from 1976, and Terror. Now, there are 4 assistant directors. First is going to be Robert Champion. This was his only credit. The save for David Annis, John Howard Davis, and Tara Fernando. Then as a writer, Norman did this for 2 films and 2 shorts. First that I've seen, only one he did in horror. Hayden Pierce is next. This is his only credit. Same for, I'm guessing, his brother of Fraser Pierce. Now let's go over to the actors. First is going to be Atchison. She was in 3 films. First that I've seen, only one in horror. This was Brooks' only credit. And then Haywood is last. He was in 3 movies, only one that I've seen, and the only one he has done in the horror genre. All right, for this movie, though, we start with footage from 1959. They are ringing into the 1960s. Whereas things are kind of winding down at this party, there's just a few couples left. They do a conga line where a woman at the end stops and walks back to the middle of the dance floor. It then shifts to what I'm guessing is the present, so like the mid to late 1980s. We're at a beach with a nearby carnival. We have 2 couples. One of them is Rick, portrayed by Powley, and Janet, portrayed by Brooks. The other is Tom and Leslie, and Tom is portrayed by Ronnie. Leslie is portrayed by Atchison. And then there's another friend here of Spud, portrayed by Haywood. So they head up to the carnival. It's from here they stumble upon a couple of greasers, or at least some like these like hard-looking dudes who are attacking a woman of Carol, portrayed by Romaine. Tom and Spud intervene. The carny appears to be their father, or at least that's what the character's name is. He is portrayed by Emerson, and they give chase. Our crew, along with Carol, then get into the vehicle and get away. They take their boat. The problem here is that Spud isn't great at steering, and he ends up running them over some rocks. This causes a leak. They seek refuge on a nearby island. It does seem to be good fortune, as there's a hotel there. Our group goes in, doesn't find anybody. They split up, and they can't seem to find anybody doing that. It's interesting, though, because the place looks like it's done up for New Year's. So then things get weird from here. Carol meets a maid who brings her a blanket to warm up. Spud sees a band playing and they disappear. There's some other things that kind of happen that bring things to, or like things that shouldn't be come to life. It does help that the people chasing them also come to the island. Things seem to be stuck in the past with decorations that are up, as well as like news reports that play, magazines. And the news reports keep talking about this airplane that is coming to crash or something along these lines. Our group fights for survival as they try to find a way off the island before they're trapped forever. Let's only my recap action of the characters. Where I want to start is something I read about this film. Warren was getting pushback from the producers, and there were budget issues as well. I'm actually going to go ahead and jump over to talk about that really quick here. Is that the movie was originally supposed to be set in 1950s, but the idea was abandoned due to budget. And the other one that I was talking about here is Warren hated making this due to the restrictions from the producers, and he claimed that they didn't know how horror movies worked. Due to his experience, he never directed a movie again, and only made a few short films some years later. So that's kind of a bummer, because But so this all makes sense. For like why we have some good elements. It's just muddled and it doesn't make a lot of sense. What I will say is though, is this is entertaining, so that does have that going for it. Now that it's set up, I like the aspects overall. The film follows a group who end up protecting an American girl, Carol, from bullies while she's visiting the United Kingdom. A major issue is a lack of development, such as the relationship between the bullies. I'm assuming they're probably brothers, and then the carny being, their dad as his character, that's what that is. While the chase through the carnival is good, their decision to follow the group all the way to the island, I don't believe that. It feels it's partially convenient for something they need later on. Then going from there, I do enjoy the elements that are used for horror. I'll avoid going into spoilers, but we have some good writing at times. I love that we get introduced to this airplane and a crash that ends up happening. How it explains a certain element was good, especially because this airplane had certain things that it was capable of. And then there's also like this experiment being done on the island. That's kind of where I get a little bit confused as some of the things that kind of get introduced. If there was experiments being done, I don't think there would be a hotel unless they're all staying at that hotel, but I digress. This place just kind of seems stuck in the past, almost in a time loop. Is a fun element to play with. It's an idea that I'm always down for. Let's then shift over that this is clearly inspired by The Evil Dead. I can't fault them for that. The budgets are probably fairly comparable. You wouldn't need a huge budget either. I love the idea that anyone that dies here becomes part of the curse. I'll also say this feels inspired by House, like the Japanese one of Houseu. We have elements in the house coming to life and attacking. It doesn't make complete sense. It helps with the atmosphere though, and the problem is that it just goes off the rails, and I would say it gets comedic at times from there. Before moving from the story, let's kind of go over some of the other themes to include. Something I didn't consider at first is wanting to set this in the past 1950s. I guess this is an era, that is associated with the good old days, perverting that with good element to play with. We have characters changing into clothes that they find. That kind of looks like it might be nostalgia idea there. I do also enjoy the use of mirrors as gateways or traps. Helps with not knowing what's real as well. We also have some possessed people. They could be seen as like losing their self or their humanity. Let's then shift over to discussing the filmmaking, since that's the better part. The cinematography and framing were fine. Being able to capture that this is a remote island that builds tension, they can't easily get away due to the boat sinking. Having the characters deal with supernatural threat is good. They went practical with the effects, more due to the era and budget. These aren't great, but there is still charm there. Other than that, I love the music used, but as it fits the vibe that they're going for. There are selections that help the atmosphere as well. All that's left then would be action performances. There's an amateur feel. Our main group of characters are fine, which includes Atchison, Brooks, Haywood, Pauli, and Ronnie. It just feels a bit odd that Roman falls in with them, but I've tagged along and ended up in some weird places, so it isn't completely out of the realm of like possibility as well. I don't fully understand Emerson and his crew. They're fine, they're intimidating enough, and the rest of the cast are fine. On top of that, they tend to be quirky, which fits the overall vibe, I would say, for that. Let's do some trivia here. So, shot on location at Butlin's Berry Island in Wales. The Delta and the Bannerman Part 1, which also from 87, was also filmed there. That story, like Bloody New Year, has a 1950s theme. When the teens regroup and find the hotel's theater, it is screening the film Fiend Without a Face from 1958. So the popular Screen magazine scene in the pub was dated January 1960 at the price of 25 cents, a value of about $2.40 today, and had Ed Burns and Sandra Dee on the cover. The movie was originally, or I've said that one already. So Steve Emerson, who plays Dad, also served as the stunt coordinator. Oddly enough, he is the guy who owns the Winchester in Shaun of the Dead. When Rick is dangling from the cliff, no safety equipment was used for the actor. Despite most of the movie taking place presumably in the middle of nowhere, the Friars Point house, where most of the movie is set, in reality is actually only 0.7 miles away from Berry Island, where the beginning of the movie takes place. And then director Warren said that the idea of the movie came from a real-life event that happened involving a Scottish island contamination due to a disease control experiment gone wrong. Kind of cool there. So in conclusion, this is a deeply flawed but genuinely entertaining British horror film. While the narrative is muddled, likely due to the reported production and budget issues, its chaotic energy, unique premise of time looping, killer hotel, and blend of influences from films like The Evil Dead and House make it a memorable watch. The commitment to practical effects and the bizarre atmosphere, enhanced by the remote island setting and dated pop culture nostalgia, provide a distinct charm despite the amateur performances. For fans of obscure, low-budget 80s horror or the works of Warren, this film is worthwhile. It's nonsensical dive into genre excess, perfectly suited for late-night viewing. So my rating here, this one's fun. It's not great at all, but I give Bloody New Year a 6 out of 10. I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything there I need to delve anything deeper into, so let me go ahead then and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be. Creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that's going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And then for my next episode, this is going to end up being the big thing, the big finale here for 2025. This is going to be my top 100 horror films. We'll kind of figure things out there. I need to see how many I end up with, but I'm going to end up doing my for sure top 100. And then I'll do honorable mentions and then probably my bottom 10. I'm trying to figure out, see how many of those are going to be included and everything where, but I'll figure that out by the time I'm doing that, because I'm actually going to be watching things up until New Year's Eve, but Ohio State plays on New Year's Eve, so that gives me a nice little thing where I can, have a clean break to figure things out. And then I also have the first and second off, as well as the weekend because of work and everything like that. So there'll be, more 2025 films that I'll be rewatching. I might try to slide in a few of them that I haven't seen yet to just round out my end of the year list and everything like that. And then I'll have just more, and then I'll just kick in on January 1st with starting to watch what I will for 2026. So I don't think there's anything else I'm going to do here for this outro except say, that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending